It's been 6 months since the breakup. My ex-boyfriend sent me a friend request late at night with a message. I'm drunk, don't accept. I barely glanced at it before immediately accepting and sending 3 messages in succession. Where are you? Send your location. I'm coming to find you. My ex quickly shared his location. I typed, stay right there. Then I exited the chat app and opened Netflix. That night, my phone screen stayed lit until 3 a.m. The next day at work, I made coffee, wrapped myself in a blanket, and finally logged back into the chat app. Sylvan had sent me 99 plus messages from the early morning hours until 6 a.m. today. Fortunately, I had set my notifications to do not disturb. His final message read, "Good night, I made it home." I felt relieved. After 99 plus messages of impotent rage, he somehow found peace. I had no desire to read the messages and immediately blocked him. Then I grabbed the files I'd prepared and waited outside the conference room. I checked my watch. When the time hit 10:06, the CEO in the conference room threw down some documents and shouted, "Who made this proposal? Get out here." I seized the moment, pushing the door open. Under everyone's surprised gaze, I raised my hand and said, "I did." My boss had previously picked apart my first proposal. I diligently revised it for 2 weeks, according to his suggestions. Although the final proposal was unrecognizable, at least I submitted it. I thought that was the end of it, until I discovered he had secretly printed my original proposal. Being clever, I knew he was trying to undermine me, so I was prepared for today. My sudden entrance surprised everyone in the conference room, especially my boss. But I couldn't let him claim he had a backup plan. I addressed the CEO directly. "Sir, we take this project very seriously. My manager chose this version from the many proposals I submitted, but I have other options if you'd like to see them." The CEO raised an eyebrow. He typically dislikes subordinates being so presumptuous. Middle management needed to maintain authority over their teams. But today was different. The proposal he'd just seen was laughable and urgent. Someone with a plan B could save the day. He gestured for me to proceed. Unlike my boss, I knew this proposal intimately with deeper insights. I presented my plan concisely, addressing key pain points in just 5 minutes. The room fell silent. The CEO had straightened his posture. Everyone could see what had happened with the submitted proposal, but he simply waved his hand and said, "Wait for notification." The CEO's methods were swift and decisive. He wouldn't confront my boss in my presence, but that didn't mean he would do nothing. That afternoon, when I received notice to leave the project, I saw my boss packing up and processing his resignation. Before leaving, he shot me a vicious glare. I contentedly sipped my coffee and left work on time. Unexpectedly, I ran into Sylvan downstairs. We worked in the same building, but for different companies. His elevator card couldn't access my floor, so he could only intercept me in the lobby. "Nana, I don't understand. Why did you suddenly break up with me? What did I do wrong? After what happened last night, now that you've vented, can we reconcile? I really can't live without you." Knowing he was putting on an act, I asked, "You really want to get back together?" Sylvan's eyes lit up as he nodded vigorously. I glanced around, pointing at a Maybach nearby. "I want to ride in that. Send me 500,000 and show me what you're capable of." Sylvan was stunned. "Solana, have you gone money crazy? What happened to you? You weren't this materialistic before. Can we stop fighting? Please, I seriously want to marry you." Good grief. Hearing, "I want to marry you," in broad daylight intensified my lingering headache from lack of sleep. Just then, the Maybach owner stepped out, seemingly checking his tires. After a quick glance, I said, "If you had his waist, legs, and butt, I'd be the one taking care of you." I didn't think I said it loudly, but the Maybach owner turned, fixing me with a piercing gaze. Meeting his eyes, I nearly choked on my own saliva. The CEO, Sylvan, was quite the traditionalist. To protect his fragile ego, I had willingly shared his struggles. Eating takeout from fast food restaurants, living in cramped rentals, wearing cheap clothes. After my comment, his face flushed with embarrassment and shame before he stormed off. In truth, Sylvan was just a bit short but quite handsome. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been so infatuated. Without dedicated exercise, his physique naturally couldn't compare to the CEO, who spent considerable time at the gym. Thinking of this, I immediately signed up for a membership at the gym closest to my office. Finding attractive men was secondary. Improving my fitness was the priority. A trainer approached. "When would you like to start?" I waved him off and focused on 3 men in tight pants across the room. "How about them?" I wondered aloud, before clicking my tongue in disappointment. Still lacking in the posterior department. I froze, realizing those weren't the trainer's words. Turning around, I found the CEO looking down at me, his muscular arms glistening with sweat, his gaze intense. My crouching legs went numb, and I collapsed to the floor. My eyes fell to his tight pants. As the CEO opened his mouth to speak, he pressed his sweat towel in front of himself and said through gritted teeth, "Solana." I considered myself a mature, composed person, but since my boss discovered my true nature, I completely embraced it. I stalked the gym after work and openly scrolled through fitness model videos during breaks at the office. The CEO caught me several times. I couldn't help but wonder. He rarely visited our office floor before, but lately he'd been appearing quite frequently. Nevertheless, I focused on my work. I had submitted the follow-up plans for the proposal, and the client was reportedly very satisfied, even offering to increase the budget. My bonus was secured, so I left work on time and arrived at my scheduled dinner. After hearing what I had to say, the man across from me looked solemn. "I'll investigate this thoroughly. Thank you for the warning." "No need to thank me," I sighed. "I've already broken up with Sylvan. Telling you has lifted a weight off my shoulders." The man nodded with a smile and prepared to leave. I stood up as well, but turning around I saw, "Todd, how did I run into the CEO again?" Leonard looked surprised to see me too. Then his gaze shifted to the man across from me, his expression doubtful. Seeing I had company, the man nodded politely and left. Once he was gone, Leonard spoke. "Have you become so desperate that you'd settle for someone like him?" "Me? What are you talking about?" The man I met today was the vice president of Sylvan's company. After Sylvan made money in the stock market, he bragged about it to me multiple times. When the market crashed, he came to me desperate for $30,000. His panic seemed suspicious, so I threatened not to lend him the money unless he told me the truth. Only then did he confess that he had misappropriated client deposits and couldn't cover the shortfall. At the time, our relationship was still good, and I fell for his sweet talk, forgiving his terrible behavior without pressing him to repay me. But recently he did it again, and I suddenly realized I couldn't stay with someone of such poor character. After breaking up with him, I tried to contact this VP, and we finally met today. The VP was a middle-aged, married man with a beer belly and receding hairline. His appearance was rather ordinary, but he was principled and honest, a good person. I snapped back to reality. Looking at the CEO's furrowed brow, I felt mischievous and smiled faintly. He may not be much to look at, but he treats me incredibly well. Leonard's frown deepened. He stared at me for a moment before saying, "You'd be better off with someone from the gym." "No, those guys aren't good either." I pretended to sigh. "It's fine. I don't care about looks anyway." Leonard gazed at me with words left unspoken, then suddenly remembered something. "If you don't care about looks, then what are all those guys on your phone?" I was stunned, nearly laughing out loud. So he had noticed me scrolling through fitness model videos. But he didn't wait for my answer before walking away. Just then my phone received a message. I glanced at it, and my smile faded. It was from Sylvan's mother. Last year, when I broke my leg falling off my bike on a hillside, it was his mother who brought me soup every day during my 2 weeks in the hospital. She visited even more frequently than Sylvan did. Part of the reason I struggled to break up with Sylvan was because of his mother. Now, Mrs. Miller was messaging to say she had dried some fruit and wanted to send me some. Though I cherished her warmth, since we had broken up, I needed to be clear about the situation. After explaining that Sylvan and I had been separated for 6 months, I removed Mrs. Miller from my contacts. I never imagined this would trigger a series of events. One day after work, I ran into Mrs. Miller outside the office building. The moment she saw me, she grabbed onto me like a lifeline. "Nana, have you heard from Sil? I've called him so many times, but he won't answer." I was taken aback, quickly guessing that Sylvan's misappropriation of funds for stock trading had been discovered. He couldn't repay the money quickly, so he'd gone into hiding. Before I could speak, the middle-aged woman beside Mrs. Miller jumped in. "Have you been hiding, Sil? You wicked woman. You date someone's son, and then try to keep him all to yourself. Don't forget he still has a mother. Did you brainwash Sil into abandoning his own mother?" "Me." Mrs. Miller tried to restrain her, saying, "Please stop." I looked at them both. So this was an interrogation mission. I coldly replied, "We broke up ages ago. How would I know where he is?" The woman continued her tirade. "Then give back the money. Sil's salary and bonuses over the past few years add up to 200,000 or 300,000. The family needed that money to build a house. but he said he gave it all to you to manage. Since you've broken up, why are you still keeping his money? I listened, then looked at Mrs. Miller. Even if Sylvan made up all sorts of lies, surely his mother would know her own son? But when Mrs. Miller met my gaze, she looked away. Fine, I said, taking out my phone. Let's call the police. With their help, we can check my bank records and see if a single cent of his money is with me. Once the police were involved, they even found the hotel where Sylvan was hiding. He was dragged out of hiding. Only then did Mrs. Miller discover that he was being sued by his company for financial misconduct. At the police station, Mrs. Miller berated her son. Get that money out of the stock market and return it to the company right now. I'll make up the rest even if I have to starve for the rest of my life. Sylvan begged tearfully. Mom, I can't withdraw the money now. If I do, I'll lose $200,000. Mrs. Miller was furious. How dare you use other people's money for something like this? Sylvan was about to respond when he spotted me. His eyes widened as he lunged toward me. Solana, was it you? Did you call the police? Did you bring my mother here? And the company issue, was that you're doing too? We broke up and you're still trying to ruin me? You bitch. What kind of sick game are you playing? He tried to attack me, but the police officers quickly restrained him. I crossed my arms and said coldly, if you don't want others to know, then don't do it in the first place. After leaving the police station, I went straight to a bar to drink my sorrows away. Sylvan, I had truly loved him, but only today did I learn how he portrayed me to his family. He had presented himself as a high-level executive at a major company, exceptionally capable and earning a fortune, burdened with a vain, selfish girlfriend. Whenever his parents asked him to visit, he lied that I wouldn't allow it. Whenever they needed financial help, he used the excuse that I controlled the money and gave them nothing. He took no responsibility. I got all the blame. What hurt me most wasn't Sylvan's final outburst. It was Mrs. Miller. Having lost my parents early, Mrs. Miller's warmth had been precious to me. I had cherished it. But now I realized she was only afraid I'd break up with her son and not return the supposed $200,000 he'd left with me. It was all fake. Slightly tipsy, I booked a room at the hotel above the bar, planning to sleep it off before facing tomorrow's problems. But unexpectedly, I ran into Todd in the hallway. Todd's condition was similar to mine, though he was clearly much more intoxicated. His neck and ears were flushed red, his eyes were slightly narrowed as he looked at me, and his voice had a magnetic quality, deep and resonant. My heart skipped a beat. I stumbled slightly, sliding closer to him, and looked up to ask, Sir, why are you here? Leonard Todd closed his eyes briefly, his expression a mixture of frustration and resignation. Domineering CEO, hotel drugged, the romance novel trifecta. How much had he drunk? He was already speaking nonsense. I immediately pulled out my phone. As the saying goes, don't pick up strange men from the street. Seeing his confused state, I figured I should send him to the hospital or find a male colleague to help take care of him. But the CEO quickly grabbed my hand. He leaned down slightly, sniffing near my ear, and said, $300,000 to take care of me tonight. I was startled and immediately replied, I'm not that kind of person. Leonard eyed me through narrowed eyes, speaking with surprising clarity. What are you thinking? $600,000. Just help me to my room, guard the door, and don't let anyone in. Me. That's it. Him. That's it. Me. Deal. I absolutely did not agree to help, because of the $600,000. Being the kind-hearted person I am, how could I ignore a drunk CEO in need? But after following his instructions and helping him into room 1603, a series of bizarre events unfolded. An 18-year-old girl nervously knocked on the door, saying she would offer herself to Master 9 for $1 million to save her critically ill father in the hospital. I was stunned, even though the man inside wasn't Master 9. Human trafficking is illegal. I called the police immediately and shared the information about Master 9 that I coaxed from the young girl. The officers took the girl back to the station for counseling and offered to connect her with charitable organizations to help with her father's medical emergency. By the time this was resolved, it was already 2 a.m. I thought I could finally rest on the couch until morning, but no such luck. Those $600,000 were proving difficult to earn. At 2:30 a.m., another intoxicated young woman knocked on the door. I initially planned to ignore her, but to my shock, she had a key card to the room. One swipe, and she nearly got in. If I hadn't been security conscious enough to engage the safety latch after entering, she would have succeeded. I immediately called the front desk to complain about their security issues. How does everyone have a keycard to this room? I'll never book with your hotel again. The hotel manager apologized profusely. Later I discovered that the girl's stepmother had drugged her, hoping to make her marry up in society. After deliberately getting her drunk, she had used her position as a housekeeper to obtain a room keycard, telling the girl to go up and rest. In one careless moment, the girl could have lost her innocence. Todd would have been unable to deny responsibility. The plan failed. The girl sobered up and ran away with tears in her eyes. While the manager was still thinking of ways to make amends, a third girl arrived. Me. By 5 a.m., after dealing with the fifth girl of the night, I closed the door and returned to the bedside. Seeing Todd sleeping peacefully, I couldn't help but remark, who would have thought that someone who appears so respectable would lead such a complicated private life? Before I could finish my sentence, the world turned upside down. Leonard had pinned me down. His hawk-like eyes stared at me as he said in a low voice, "You're still here?" Me? Question mark. CEO, have you lost your memory? You gave me $600,000 to take care of you tonight. I was about to explain, but Todd had already found his own justification. With a slight smirk, he said, "You stayed because you desire me, don't you?" As he spoke, he leaned down. I froze. This development was unexpected. I immediately stopped his advance. This would cost extra. I said. To say I wasn't attracted to Leonard would be a lie. With such a handsome man before me, my willpower was paper thin. Before, he was the untouchable CEO. We rarely had opportunities to meet. Though my family was well off, compared to the Fu family, we weren't even in the same league. Leonard and I had attended the same high school, but I'd only ever admired him from afar. Never had I been this close to him. Of course, this encounter would fulfill a long-held desire. At dawn, I slipped away. When Monday came, I was on edge, fearing Leonard would confront me. But after subtly questioning the CEO's assistant, I learned he'd been called away Sunday to handle a strike emergency. I secretly sighed in relief. From romance novels, I knew that CEOs typically go on extended business trips after one-night stands. Leonard appeared to be no exception, but unexpectedly, while still at work that day, I received a message. Wait for me to return. Me. Aren't CEOs on business trips usually too busy for messages, typically going silent? This is when the female protagonist would start overthinking and make some irreversible mistake. I replied, "Aren't you busy?" Leonard, I'm on a business trip, not dead. Is it so difficult to send a message during a meal? Me. But I didn't dare respond further. The CEO had paid $600,000 for me to care for him while drunk. Instead, I had taken him to bed. My profound sense of moral guilt was crushing me. I planned to apologize properly when he returned, but unexpectedly, his trip extended beyond 2 weeks with no end in sight. And now, staring at the 2 lines on the pregnancy test, I sank into deep contemplation. The harshness of life among the elite. Everyone who has read romance novels is familiar with this trope. If the Fu family discovered I was carrying Leonard's child, I immediately took my project bonus, submitted my resignation, and called my grandfather. "Grandpa, would you support me if I decided to raise a child alone?" After my parents passed away, my grandfather and I only had each other. Though our family couldn't compare to the Fuss, we were comfortably middle class. Raising a child was certainly manageable. With Leonard still away on business, the possibility of fleeing with his child seemed endless. Taking the $600,000 Leonard had given me, I went to an island retreat arranged by my grandfather to await the birth. But just 1 week after I'd settled in, Leonard found me. He arrived on a private jet. Upon arrival, he grasped both my hands, his eyes brimming with tears. Finally, all the checkboxes are ticked. One-night stand, pregnancy escape, desperate chase. All the elements are complete. Can we now properly follow the domineering CEO storyline? Me? Question mark. Through Leonard's explanation, I finally understood. We were characters in a romance novel. He was the domineering CEO male lead, and I was the villainous female supporting character. According to the plot, that night at the hotel, whether it was the 18-year-old girl willing to sell herself to save her father, or the girl drugged by her relatives, or any of the others, he was supposed to sleep with one of them. No matter how he tried to avoid it, there was no escape. If he didn't comply, every 3 months he would be subjected to another drugged at a hotel scenario. Speaking of this, he expressed deep remorse. "I'm sorry for using you, but among all those people, I only like you. I was desperate that night. If I had to sleep with someone, I would only choose you. I wanted to properly court you before developing our relationship. But the world doesn't allow a CEO to do such unreasonable things. I frowned. You just said I'm the villainous supporting character? How am I villainous? What did I do? Leonard rubbed his nose and said, soon you'll fall into the gutter. Then you'll change completely. And out of jealousy that the CEO male lead has fallen for a poor girl, you'll start scheming against her. I furrowed my brow. Based on my years of novel reading experience, I must have been possessed by another soul. Meanwhile, he was absorbed in the joy of finally breaking the CEO curse. He held my hands earnestly and said, I'll treat you well from now on. You don't need to act out of jealousy against other girls. I know you're a kind person. Though we've accidentally changed the story's direction, everything has worked out perfectly. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I looked at him, gradually becoming calmer. True, I had feelings for him. But I withdrew my hands and said, you don't love me. You just needed someone to free you from your CEO curse. It doesn't matter who I am. You'd be with anyone who could save you. Leonard was stunned. He frowned at me. No, look, I chose you among so many people. I rejected everyone else and only accepted you. Doesn't that mean I like you? Looking into his eyes, I said, you don't even know my true personality. What foods do I like? What am I afraid of? You know nothing about me, yet you claim to like me. What exactly do you like about me? Leonard also calmed down. You don't believe I like you, do you? For the next several months, Leonard demonstrated through actions why he liked me. It was then I realized how well he knew me. He said I dislike spring and winter. In spring, pollen makes my nose allergic. Winter is too cold. I'd rather stay home than go out. I love sweets and hate cilantro. On the surface, I'm a flawless, strong woman, but at night I tend to get emotional. During these months, he never missed a prenatal checkup. When he took nice photos, he would share them with me. Time and again, he patiently told me he loved my beauty, my intelligence, my innocence. But I would still say, I'm not that great. During pregnancy, my face would swell. I would get angry easily. I would cry in the middle of the night. But he would hold me and say, it's okay. You don't need to be perfect. When you're clumsy, I feel useful. Then he would go out at 3 a.m. to buy the strawberries I craved. I must admit, during these months, he truly played the role of a good man. Such a wonderful person. I couldn't believe I'd encountered someone like him in reality. Oh right, he said we were characters in a book. All of this happening made perfect sense within that context. With 2 months left before delivery, he proposed. This time I didn't refuse. I said we would get the marriage certificate after the baby was born, when my face wasn't so swollen. After some persuasion, he agreed. He vaguely revealed that in real life, he was a business partner in a company. Not as powerful as the Fu family, but experienced enough not to immediately expose himself after being transported into this world. I laughed and asked if there were novels about fictional characters coming to reality. He said, of course there are. Then he began teaching me guidelines for fictional characters living in the real world. Little did we know this conversation would become prophetic. At our engagement ceremony, I witnessed how someone could suddenly change personalities. The CEO, as if his brain had been scooped out, declared, I won't accept my family's arrangements. I want a free marriage. I want to fall in love freely. I won't marry her. I knew then. The original Leonard had returned. I don't know where he had been all this time, but now he was back. I began to frown, lost in thought. So this was what the boy I had a crush on in high school was really like. But I realized I loved the Leonard who had come later much more. Perhaps because he was good to me. I wasn't sure if this was right. Perhaps it wasn't fair to the original Leonard. But I couldn't worry about that anymore. I canceled the engagement ceremony. Following my original plan, I went to raise the child alone. Although my grandfather deliberately shielded me from the news, I still learned that Leonard had slept with a girl at a hotel and began to love her passionately. He declared to the world that he would only love her. Perhaps the world's mechanisms controlled him to do so, but he did these things nonetheless. My grandfather was cautious around me every day, afraid I might see the news and become despondent. But as I saw these reports, I found I wasn't as heartbroken as I'd imagined. After all, I knew he was no longer the Leonard who had been good to me. I began to accept the fact that the Leonard I loved would never return. A year after giving birth, while my grandfather and the nanny were happily playing with the baby, I went out alone to clear my mind. Unexpectedly, I ran into Sylvan. After just a few years, Sylvan had changed drastically. His face was covered in stubble, like a down-and-out vagrant. He said viciously, "Finally caught you alone. I know you were the one who reported me to the company. Since I can't have a good life, I won't let you have one either." I ran as fast as I could. Sylvan wasn't in the habit of exercising. Based on his previous physical condition, he shouldn't have been able to catch me, but I underestimated the explosive power a man gains from hatred. As I slipped and fell toward a filthy ditch, I thought to myself, still can't escape that sewer connection. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in an unfamiliar environment. A group of doctors in white coats surrounded me, calling it a medical miracle. They said I had defeated the cancer cells and could live like a normal person from now on. But only I knew the truth. After falling into that sewer, fate had played another joke on me. A fictional character had come to reality, or perhaps the place I arrived wasn't reality at all, but another parallel world. Because when I dialed Leonard's number, which I had memorized over 1,000 times, it said the number didn't exist. The emails I sent disappeared without response. Perhaps in this world I had entered, there was no such person as Leonard. Until one day, while waiting for the elevator, I overheard people behind me discussing a novel. "You're a grown adult, stop being obsessed with novels," and saying you like that female as I thought it was a mother lecturing her child who was reading. But to my surprise, the response came from a low-voiced adult male. He said, "My aunt gave me this book because the male lead has the same name as me. That's the only reason I'm reading it." He paused, then added, "Compared to the female lead who does nothing but throw tantrums and cry, the career-oriented and independent female side character is much more likable." The older woman had no desire to argue with him. As the elevator arrived, she simply said, "Get a new phone number. Keep your old one for work. Separate your personal and professional life, so you don't get flooded with calls during your time off." The man nodded and replied, "Yeah, I'll set up a new email too." When the elevator arrived, the woman called to him, "Leonard, this elevator over here." I realized then that I hadn't been transported to a parallel world. Instead, this world's Leonard simply didn't recognize me yet. I spent some time finding the company Leonard had co-founded. After submitting my resume, I successfully interviewed for the project manager position. The final interview was conducted by Leonard himself. Looking at my resume, he said, "You're young, but your project experience is quite extensive. Your proposal is very impressive." I smiled and replied, "You're too kind." The interview went smoothly. However, at the end, he looked at my name, coughed lightly, and said, "Your name is very unique, Solana. It's the same as a female side character in a novel I read." My smile widened. A busy CEO still has time to read novels? He looked at me startled. His eyes lowered quickly, avoiding my gaze, but his earlobes turned noticeably red. Before coming to the interview, I had been extremely anxious. I feared that Leonard wouldn't remember me, that even if I appeared before him deliberately, he still wouldn't fall in love with me. I had been terrified by this possibility. I tried to convince myself to let things flow naturally, but in this moment, I truly felt at peace. Whatever happens, happens. I needed to broaden my perspective. I had been given a second chance at life. Who said I could only love Leonard? I continued going to work and doing my job diligently, but a young female colleague quietly whispered to me in the break room, "Solana, haven't you noticed the CEO always sneaking glances at you during meetings?" Stirring sugar into my coffee, I replied, "Really?" "Yes. He used to rarely visit our project team. Since you arrived, he's constantly around. I can't even slack off anymore." I gently patted her shoulder and said, "You're overthinking it. The CEO isn't that free." I returned to my desk with my coffee, completed the new project proposal, checked for any omissions, and submitted it. Before the end of the workday, I received feedback, direct approval from the CEO. "Do you have time after work?" I typed back, "What's up? I might have plans." The CEO responded quickly, "We need to discuss the new project proposal in person. Sorry to ask you to work overtime today." I smiled to myself. No problem. The email was copied to my team members. Upon receiving the overtime notice, my young colleague looked up at me and mouthed, "Poor Solana, the CEO is making you work overtime alone." I just smiled and shrugged. In truth, this project wasn't urgent at all. Todd had no real reason to make me work overtime for a discussion. When he arrived, we only discussed some implementation aspects of the project. After finishing the official business, he lowered his eyes and attempted casual conversation. "Did keeping you for overtime interfere with your date plans?" Leonard had once told me he loved my face. He said I was so beautiful he could barely look at me directly. I always thought he was just flattering me. Only now, seeing him continuously avoiding looking at my face, did I start to believe him. I'm not extraordinarily beautiful, but perhaps in the eyes of someone who likes you, Your good qualities become infinitely magnified. I looked at him and said, "This project has a substantial bonus. Of course I'd cancel any date for it." His expression revealed nothing. His gaze fell on the rubber duck on my desk. "That desk ornament seems familiar." I replied, "Yeah, I habitually keep a rubber duck around. When I'm stressed, I tap it to release pressure." But Leonard shook his head and said, "No, it's not that. This habit of yours is identical to the female side character in that novel I mentioned. She also kept a rubber duck like this on her desk." Looking at him, I asked, "What kind of novel would describe in such detail what a side character keeps on her desk?" Leonard froze at my words. Indeed, no novel would go into such detail, unless he had seen it with his own eyes. His expression changed, and he quickly stood up. After that, I didn't see Leonard at the company for 2 weeks. I vaguely sensed that Leonard had fragmentary memories of his transmigration into the novel, but they weren't complete. Perhaps he would only ever have these scattered memories. Perhaps he would treat his experience of entering the book as just a dream. I still decided to let things unfold naturally. Recently, a university professor had been pursuing me rather intensely, even wanting to take me out for lunch. I went once, and was spotted by colleagues who posted about it in the gossip group chat. Today when I went again, I was particularly mindful of whether any familiar faces were around. I felt sneaky, as if doing something illicit. Unexpectedly, as I sat down to order, Leonard appeared with a gloomy face and grabbed my wrist. "Can you come with me for a moment?" he asked. In the cramped back seat of his car, Leonard's aura was intimidating, but to my surprise his first words were, You're cheating on me." I widened my eyes, reached out to feel his forehead to check for fever, then said, "Todd, are you sick? We've never been together. How could I be cheating?" Leonard stopped my wandering hand with his and said, "You accepted my proposal. We even have children. And yet you're dating him. I saw everything. I remember it all now. I recognize you. Why didn't you tell me who you were when you came back?" Looking into his eyes, I finally realized he truly remembered everything. I was about to explain, but he suddenly embraced me tightly and said, "No need to explain. I understand. I'm sorry I didn't remember you." When he finally let go, I gently pushed him away and said, "You were the one who said good men only exist in novels. What if you turned out to be a jerk in real life? Why would I reveal myself to you then?" I couldn't finish my sentence. Leonard silenced me with a kiss. Through gritted teeth he said, "You always know how to aggravate me." I ended up with Leonard in reality. He told me that in real life, a capable, beautiful, and graceful woman wouldn't be relegated to a jealous side character. He promised to spend his life making me the protagonist of his story.